All right, a pleasant day to everybody. And we are Group 7 and we will be presenting financial management in education. So allow us first to introduce ourselves. I'm Teresa Sikat and I live in Manteca, California. I also teach high school math in Manteca High School.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Garcia. I teach at Los Angeles Unified School District. I teach math at Ardita High School. And I'm also part of the team reporting on financial management.
Hi, my name is El Merito C. I am in Los Angeles, California, together with Jonathan. So we teach on the same school, Arleta High School. I teach math, Algebra 2, and also engineering class.
In our presentation, we will cover and discuss three subtopics related to financial management in education. And these are A, the place of financial management in education, B, financial planning and costing, and C, sources of funds in education. I will be presenting the first topic, which is the place of financial management in education. And here we have four goals. The first one is to review the definition of financial resources and financial management. Second, we will identify the importance, purpose, elements, and focus of financial management in education. Third goal, we will describe the Financial Management Operations Manual in the Department of Education in the Philippines. And the fourth is to describe the role of school administrators as financial managers in education. So let's review what financial resources means in general. It is considered as the life wire of any system, as these are funds required for a smooth operation of a system. Funds are needed for the procurement of facilities, equipment, and also needed to pay salaries of administrative and even non-academic and academic staff. And so it is a critical component in any system or organization which other factors of administrations are created, maintained, and sustained. So what about financial management? Basically, it's about managing the financial resources. And it is one of the most fundamental practices in any enterprise or business, including schools and other educational institutes. And because money is involved, management of these financial resources is an important part or aspect of an organization. It also means planning, organizing, directing, and controlling the financial activities in schools so that the financial resources are used in an efficient and effective manner. Also, financial management ensures that the administration and management team are able to manage the budget in a better manner and make informed decisions related to the school budget. And so the question is, why is financial management needed in education, or why is it important? First, public schools exist to provide mass public education at public expense, and some use of private resources as well. We all know that the financial resources of schools are coming directly from the public or from taxpayers to the local government or provincial or national government that collects taxes from the people indirectly. So it's really important that these resources are being used because the society rightfully expects that resources are made available and be effectively and efficiently managed. Third importance is that the purpose for which the resources have been committed are maximized. And lastly, education's budget and expenditures require control and accountability. And like what I've said, it's resource that comes from taxpayers. So it's really important that these resources are being spent wisely and efficiently, and that they are not just being used for anything else that are not important or will not benefit our students and our society. Now let's take a look at the purpose of financial management in education. We know that it's really important, so we'll look at its purpose in education. Number one, to ensure regular and adequate supply of funds to the education system. Number two, to check optimum funds utilization. Through financial management, there is a check and balance if funds are utilized properly. And then number three, to guarantee that education programs and activities are prioritized, making sure that the important programs are being funded. And number four, to effectively monitor and evaluate finances. There is, again, check and balance and control. And it's really important that there is monitoring and evaluating if these finances are used effectively. Financial management has four basic elements. Let's take a look at each one. The first is planning. And that's the first step in managing financial resources. That is to plan. And this involves establishing financial objectives or goals and identifying the steps in attaining these goals. Planning involves brainstorming and teamwork within the organization in terms of proper use of resources or even where these resources are coming from. It's really important to know and to plan where to get these resources. The second element is organizing and directing, and this involves identifying and deciding what specific resources are available and necessary to carry out the plan effectively. The third element is decision making, and this is about making choices after investigating all possibilities and options. Making decision is a very important part of financial management because it requires critical and careful thinking and considerations of um, other elements, possible options, and it's not just one person deciding, but it's a decision making that involves a team. And then the fourth element is controlling or regulations, which adheres to clear procedures on the use of financial resources. And in this element, check and balance is necessary to avoid misuse of resources. Now, what are the focus of financial management? There are four main focus that I will present to you. The first one is the procurement of funds. This is acquisition of funds, where the funds are coming from, and mostly these are coming from the government or private agencies or sectors. And then the second focus is the allocation of funds, where the funds are being used, and also the distribution of these resources among different programs of the department. It can go to the salaries of staff or in the infrastructures like building, maintenance, and utilities. There will also be funds allocated for learning materials, and it involves the identification of needs and priority. The third focus is the monitoring of the use of funds. The overseeing and controlling of the use of funds or financial resources through check and balance is a very important part of financial management. Monitoring is the process by which the receipt of revenues and outflow of expenditures are recorded, monitored, and being adjusted if needed to ensure that the budget is managed honestly, efficiently, and effectively. And then the fourth focus is financial reports. This is reporting all schools' discharge of accountability, it is imperative to ensure relevant parties are provided with regular reports that are up to date, of course, and meaningful. This is where it will be recorded how the funds are being used, and it will be reported to the organization. Now, there are different types of reports in financial management specifically to schools. One is what we call the management reports, which are reports used by administrators like principals, assistant principals, or managers who are responsible for the day-to-day operations of the school. They will report how they use their budget, how they utilize their funds effectively. And then we also have what we call the school council reports. Here in the US, we have an organization called the School Council, and this involves parents, teachers, and other members of community. And these are reports presented to them, to the school council, for monitoring budget against revenue and expenditures. Another type of report is the finance committee report. And these are reports on operating system, cash flow, statement, and bank account movements. We also have what we call the coordinator report. So there are teaching staff who are responsible for some programs within the school, and this report will ensure that the program that they handle operates within their budget, and they should also receive reports on a regular basis. And then another type of report is the bank reconciliation reports. And this is a report or statement to match the bank transactions recorded in the books of accounts with the bank statement. Okay, now let's take a look at the financial management in the Department of Education in the Philippines. So in the Philippines, the Department of Education understands the importance of financial management. And so they issued a policy guidelines to adopt the FMOM, or what we call the Financial Management Operations Manual, in September 2016 for all financial transactions at all levels of the department. And this includes from the national, regional, and local government offices of the Department of Education. And so the FMOM is a financial reform which aims to increase transparency and accountability across all levels of the department. And then it is a living document that allows easy updating of its provisions for future government issuances related to finance, procurement, and asset management, and or new developments on school-based management. Now, in this guidelines and policy, there is a spot checking and mentoring of schools on how they effectively and efficiently deliver financial management services. And then through this policy, the DepEd recognizes the importance of continuous professional development of financial management to staff as agents of change and financial reform. And so because of the adoption of the Financial Management Operations Manual by the Department of Education, the department understands that administrators and financial managers need some training on how to use this and how to implement this manual. And so they offer professional development, and it comes with 3 phases. The first phase is the national training of trainers, in which the target participants are the central office and regional office finance officers. And then after the phase 1 will be phase 2, which is the training for the school division office. And the target participants are the finance managers in the department, like the accountant and administrative officers as well. And then the third phase is the training on the use of the financial management manual to school heads, and designated bookkeeper. And there are specific topics in the training like school-based financial management, disbursement and accounting procedures, financial reports, asset management, and disposal of unserviceable properties. So now as future administrators or financial managers, or maybe if we are current school administrators, what are our role in financial management? First, school administrators allocate funds to various activities in accordance with the budget. We authorize the disbursement of school funds, administer school funds both lawfully and morally, and then school administrators determine a school budget in consultation with other stakeholders, such as school boards, department heads, and school councils. Also, school administrators ensure that the school has the funds it needs and that those funds are used effectively and efficiently. And also ensures that all financial transactions are recorded accurately. So financial managers like school administrators have a very important role in the financial management to make sure that the resources that are being given to the school are utilized effectively and efficiently. And so I'm going to end my presentation with this slide and a statement from UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, because we saw the importance of financial management in education, its purpose. And as administrators, we have a huge task, a responsibility to manage our financial resources effectively. And so UNESCO said principals and school administrators, as financial managers of schools, are responsible for school finances. Therefore, they should be well acquainted with the basic principles of education, financing, and management. So that's my presentation, and I hope that you have an insight you learned from all the information that I've shared to you today. Thank you.
Hi. To continue on with the discussion, this is following up with Ms. Sikat's presentation, which basically is an extensive explanation of what financial management is, and part of which she already mentioned to you the roles and key elements and some highlighted principles that is a part of financial planning. Okay, so what I'm going to do now today is to give you some sort of a brief explanation on how the financial planning process and costing happens in schools. Okay, so generally, there are pretty much in most schools, whether public or private, planning school finances follow kind of like the same steps, but it varies in whatever the needs of the schools are, or whatever the vision and the mission of the school is. But they all fall through pretty much the same process. It starts off with first setting your goals. Okay, so when we set goals, we determine what the administrators determine, or school heads determine what the goals for their schools are. Like, say, for example, if they wanted to increase teachers' salaries, or they want to put in more staff, or if they wanted to have more infrastructure in terms of buildings, classrooms, and other school stuff, or say, for example, if they wanted to improve student scores, to find out ways to set their goals for the day, and that goals is being set on, and from there we'll discuss more on how this one is being evolved. Next one is you evaluate financial status. So basically, since funds to schools, especially public schools, trickles down from, as Missy Kat said, it trickles down from different sources of funds, part of which is government. Since if it's a public entity, so usually evaluating financial status depends upon what the goals you set in. That includes, say for example, what check and balances that you need to work on with regards to any expenditures and incomes that's coming into the school. And once you determine that, you'll be able to create the financial plan. Okay, so that would be, this is the pretty much the meat of my report today. So kind of like, how do you create a financial plan, and how do you start to allocate funds, and how this allocation happens within the school. And then carrying on and following throughout that financial plan is also essential, as Ms. Sikat said, about making sure that the money or the funds that are being allocated is being used as it's supposed to be used. Okay, and also last one would be to review and revise the progress, because it comes into a cycle in which right after finishing the whole entire school year, when the funds are supposed to be used, and then from there they reevaluate the progress, in which what part of the financial plan wasn't being overused, or what part of the plan was underused, and so on. And then and from there they come up with decisions to come up with the next year's budget. Okay, so let's start with setting goals. As I said earlier, when we speak of setting goals, this basically forms the major building block for constructing the financial plan or the budget. Okay, so what your goals are. So from what the goals are, that's the time it's gonna kind of like sort of translated into financial matters. So meaning when you say what current goals are needed in the development of the school as it moves forward. Does it need to achieve proficiency, say for example, performance level in academic areas? Making teachers to be more abreast with the current trends in education by providing professional development. So things like this are based on the administrator's analysis of the current state of the schools as it aligns with the school's mission and vision. It also identifies the school educational priorities. Okay, so some of the priorities could be short-term, or it could be long-term. Okay, so if it's a long-term, then it carries over probably on the next school year, since it's like, say for example, if you're budgeting for something that's gonna go on through a couple of school years. So once these priorities are set, this is now expressed in financial terms. And then they are ranked according to what the school needs. Okay. Moreover, making sure that these priorities should be SMART. So SMART, like an acronym SMART, meaning it has to be specific, it should be measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So has to be direct. It can be, you can see whether it's progressing or not. It can be determined that it will be attainable. It could be reached. Okay, so it is feasible, and then it can work within a specific amount of time. So once you set your goals, you can now start evaluating your financial status. Okay, so like say for example, once you set your goals, do I have the money for this? Pretty much like you're asking what if we have enough resources that would pull off, that can be used to pull off the goals that we set in earlier. So evaluating financial status in most cases, both in public and private schools, whether in the Philippines or abroad. As we all know, schools are a nonprofit organization, which pretty much they provide service to the public. So however, evaluating financial status determined on school performance and is determined on school performance, enrollment, and all other factors. And then we need also to determine if there is a carryover budget from last year that can be used. So this pretty much helps us measure the performance and the effort of achieving our educational goals that we set early on. So one of the benchmarks that follows in evaluating your financial status is your assets, where the sources of funds coming from, which later on will be discussed by Mr. C, as well as the liabilities, in which what the school actually spends on in the course of the school year. Moving on, we'll now go to creating the financial plan. So this is pretty much the drafting of the budget. So pretty much the principal or the school head should develop a total school approach or attitude to the drafting of the budget. What do we mean by this? This planning of school finances usually begins, again, with the drafting of the budget, meaning everyone who is involved in implementing the budget should also be involved in drawing it up. So pretty much in schools here in Los Angeles, we have what we call the local school leadership council, who pretty much in charge of the funds, some of the funds that is being put into schools, and they decide on to whether which money goes to which. That includes like AP classes, like professional development for teachers, and say, for example, even down to the very last school materials, notebooks, and all those stuff. Okay, as well as for there's another one aside from the local school leadership council. We do have what we call the school site council, who is in charge for the English learners. So what English learners need, and then they put it into a budget. So as we can see, it's not just simply the principal or the school head that is a part in developing the budget. Okay, so notice it includes the print of basically this whole budget thing includes the principal income for a specific financial year or for a specific school year, amounts allocated to specific items. Okay, conversion of objectives into priorities and ranking of priorities. So which comes first? For example, like you decide if we need, like, say, smart boards, or if we need projectors, and so on. Okay, continuing on. Once you do this, once everything is been set, we can now express the school plan in financial terms. This is wherein budget lines come in. So this is wherein the allocation comes in. So like, say, for example, a certain amount is being allocated for department needs. Okay, or say budget lines for field trips. Okay, so you're going to be creating all of those. It means that everyone who was involved in implementing the budget should also, again, be involved in drawing it up. So budget must be as based as far as possible to relevant and objective information. Okay, so that includes the amounts that is used in previous years. So say, for example, that's the reason why we come up with a budget analysis later on, whether or not the money that was set aside for the past year was enough that was used for this year's. Okay, so there also, again, a budget is depending on increases or decreases in enrollment. So in the United States, pretty much the budget for schools is dependent on per pupil funding. So depending upon how many kids are coming into school, I'm pretty much speaking for our district. So, but I think that would be the same thing for all the other districts and other schools in the United States. That a budget, creating the budget is dependent on decreases or increases in the enrollment, as well as the needs of different departments. And then from here, we estimate the school's income from various sources. Okay, so because that adds up to the pot. So that means, which Mr. C is going to be discussing later on, part of different, aside from the money coming from the government, there are all other monies that would be able coming from different sources. Okay, and that pretty much gives you an idea of how much the budget for the school has. Okay, so once you already have an estimated budget, you can now, and then the budget lines are already done, you can now start to allocate funds programs according to priority. And this is wherein now you test expenditure against the budget. So which means from here, sometimes in the middle of the school year, you tend to spend more than what is expected to what your budget in. And that's the time you can now create control over the budget, which again, Ms. Sikat has already pretty much give you an idea on how control is being done. Okay, so to carry out the financial plan, so it's important that when again, as Ms. Sikat has explained in the focus of financial management, organizing school finance requires familiarity and knowledgeable in a number of financial matters. So knowledge of accounting principles is a must, is a plus, not a must. But I mean, like, it's a plus, but not really that required. What is important is at least you're familiar and knowledgeable in some of the financial matters, how cash is handled, and the different reporting procedures. Understanding this reporting procedures is also essential. So you need not know everything about accounting. So you can focus on how accounting works in schools. Okay. Also, we need to know the correct procedure applied in the school when financial activities are handled. That includes, yeah, as I said earlier, how the cash flow, accounting, and reporting procedures. Okay. Because in most cases, sometimes in most cases, schools have a separate staff that kind of like deals with the financial matters, because in most cases, administrators are the ones basically are deciding. But when we keep on like tracking the cash flow and accounting, in most schools, they tend to hire someone who works on those. Next one, delegation to staff that are involved in the process of the budget plans through giving them certain functions and coordinating staff activities. So in some cases, that department reports that Ms. Sikat has already discussed to you, that involves also the different budget plans on how this money is being coordinated among each of the departments. Okay, and generally, they must have the skills relating to the collection or application of funds. That's why administrators is the sole decision maker whether to disburse the funds or not. And finally, we do the review and then revise the progress. So when you speak of review, this includes the budget review, including the analysis of plans that was put into effect, like say in the half of the budget year, and will be used as a term of reference to prepare the plan for next year. Okay, in tune with the available capacities and resources that the school has. So pretty much this ensures that each person in the school who actually performs the financial functions does the right thing at the right place and time. So basically, once it's done, it jumpstarts the preparation of an initial budget plan that can be transferred on to the next school year, added with whatever new undertakings or new goals that's being set. So it's kind of like working as a cycle. And then part of which of the review and the revision of the progress is the procedures of regular reporting. So there will be cases that reports would need auditing. So auditing of reports requires, like, say, where there must be some sort of like a check and balances of everything. And there you go, balancing of books, documentation, maintenance of records to prepare for audit inspections. Again, It's essential that principals should or school heads should remain abreast of the assets and the funds of the school, including operating assets such as even supplies, even down to the very last page of copy paper. So, and also part of the progress is, as I mentioned early on, is about control. Okay, so control measures that should be implemented in respect to the different following financial terms. So like it includes expenditures, receipts, petty cash, so bank reconciliation, school funds. That's why there has to be some sort of like reports on those. Creditors, supplies, and that includes also movable and fixed property. So once this whole system the whole step has been done, it comes up full circle. So when it comes up to full circle, as we end the school year, we can now determine whether the goals that has been set up early on was achieved. If it wasn't achieved, or if it was partially achieved, then it will add up to the new undertakings that will be set for the next school year. Okay, so this ends my report. Now we'll proceed with the next topic, which is about sources of funds in education, to be presented by Mr. C.
So again, my topic is about sources of funds in education. So what I'll be discussing, I will both discuss the funds, the sources of funds, both for the Philippines and the US education system. So I'll begin with the education in the Philippines. So the education in the Philippines, it's provided by public and private schools, colleges, universities, and technical and vocational institutions. So funding for public educations comes from the national government. So I would like also to add the different legal basis for school funding. So number one is the Republic Act number 10533, which is also known as the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. So this act enhancing the Philippine basic education system by strengthening its curriculum and increasing the number of years for basic educations, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. So we have the section 2, which is the declaration of policy. The state shall establish, maintain, and support a complete, adequate, and integrated system of education relevant to the needs of the people, the country, and the society at large. While the section 11, the appropriations, the Secretary of Education shall include in the department's program the operationalization of the Enhanced Basic Education Program, the initial funding of which shall be charged against the current appropriations of the DepEd. So therefore, the amount of the necessary for the continued implementation of the Enhanced Basic Education shall be included in the Annual General Appropriations Act. So another basis, the legal base for the funds in education in the Philippines is Batas Pambansa Bilang 232, which is the Education Act of 1982. So this act providing for the establishment and maintenance of an integrated system of educations, which also include the Chapter 5, which is the school finance and assistance. So this act shall apply to and govern both formal and non-formal systems in public and private schools in all levels of the entire education system. So the government shall adopt measures to broaden access to education through financial assistance and other forms of incentives to schools, teachers, pupils, and students, and also encourage and stimulate private support to education through inter alia, fiscal, and other assistance measures. So now, what are the different sources of funds for Philippine educations? So we have number one, the funds coming from the national government. Number 2, local government. Number 3, parents and students. Number 4, school owners. Number 5, business and industry. Number 6, loaning institutions. 7, philanthropies and civic cultural organizations. And the last one is from the alumni. So number 1, national funds. So in 2021 fiscal year, there is about 4.506 trillion money allotted for the general funds for the educations. So the Philippine Constitution has mandated the government to allocate the highest proportion of budget to educations. But reality check, although the Philippines Constitution mandated that the education should be the priority, the highest budget, national budget, the Philippines remains to have one of the lowest budget allocation to education among ASEAN countries. So it's sad to know, but that is the reality. So the national budget for fiscal year 2021, so since during the pandemic, so the Philippine government allotted an extra funding, which is what we call adapting to the new normal. So the fiscal year 2021 budget shall also prioritize the transitions and adoption of the various sectors to the new normal. So the priorities of the administration have been reshaped to adopt flexible and blended learning options to include the development, reproduction, and delivery of learning resources, the expansions of the DepEd computerization program, which aims to procure multimedia packages for public school nationwide. So coming from the national government, so where the money of the national government came from, so from the income tax, which is individual approximately, so as an individual, the government, the Philippine government is charging us 5 to 32%, and also for the corporations about 30%. So for income tax purposes, the educational institutions are classified as proprietary educational institutions, non-tax non-profit educational institutions, and government educational institutions. Another source of fund from the national government is the business taxes, which is the VAT, value-added tax, percentage tax, excise taxes. Non-taxable sources, which includes rents, concessions, and fines collected, like for the parking fines, court costs, and criminal offenders. Fees from the granting or issuance of permits or licenses, like vehicle registration, plate permits, vehicle registration fees, building fees, driver licenses. Also includes fees for professional licensing and fees for visas or passport. The second one source of fund is the local government. Republic Act number 7160, an act providing for a local government code of 1991. So Section 272, application of proceeds of the additional 1% SEF tax. The proceeds from the additional 1% tax on real property accruing to the Special Education Fund, or SEF, shall be automatically released to the local school boards. So in case of provinces, the proceeds shall be divided equally between the provincial and municipal school boards, provided, however, that the proceeds shall be allocated for the operation and maintenance of public schools, construction and repair of school buildings, facilities and equipment, educational research, purchase of books, periodicals, and sports development as determined and approved by the local school board. Number 3, source of fund, parents and students. Although the students' primarily role is that of a recipient, it's also important students should be encouraged to exercise their decision-making role in the education process. By giving aid to the decision-making process, students become an integral part of a successful institutions. Empowering students with shared decision-making increases their choices and responsibilities for their own learning. short and year 2002. So the public school is subsidized by the national government as provided on the RA number 9155, Governance of Education Act 2001, and RA number 6655, Free Public Secondary Act of 1988. However, the government support is inadequate, so the parent is willing to provide additional support through the General Parent Teachers Associations and Homeroom PTA on a voluntary basis. So number 4 source of fund is school owner. School owners contribute a starting capital for education. Number 5 source of fund, business and industry. So the business and industry, they support education because they want to have highly qualified manpower for the greater benefit of the business enterprise they are managing. So business and industry partners also provide internship to the students, offering basic salary and some benefits. Watching students gain access to higher learning and broader opportunities, paying it forward is the name of the game. When you donate to a foundation, you are literally investing in the next generation. So number 6, source of fund, loan, grants, and donations. So grants are specifically important in K-12 education because they bring extra money directly into the classroom and district. Depending on the grant, this money can support efforts in literacy, STEM, technology, curriculum, equipment, materials, or staffing. Number 7, source of fund, philanthropies and civic cultural organizations. So donating your time to support those around you is extremely beneficial, both for you and the community. It is statistically proven that people who volunteer regularly are healthier, both physical and mentally. Individuals who have volunteered throughout their lifetime typically live longer and have better psychological well-being. In addition to the health benefits, volunteering gives people a sense of purpose. The fulfilling feeling of giving back and contributing to society is unparalleled. So number 7, for the source of fund are the alumni. Alumni are interested on the continued support to their alma mater. Pride and sentiments usually result to demonstrate love on their institutions. Alumni are an institution's most loyal supporters. Alumni are fundraising prospects. So alumni are great role models for current students and are often well placed to offer practical support to students as they start their careers. Alumni are the international ambassadors. They take their knowledge of the institutions to their hometowns and countries and into their professional and social networks. Now, what about the fund of the sources of funds for the education in the United States? So US public school funding comes from a variety of sources. 1 is local, 2 is states, and 3 is federal. So US constitutions, according to the US constitutions, governance of schools is the responsibility of individual states that are best equipped to recognize and meet the needs of the students in that state. The large majority of federal funding set aside for public education is distributed directly to local schools. The federal government does not have the authority to set unfunded mandates to our local schools, which means school and district can always refuse federal money offered. If the state government does not wish to participate in the program, those dollars are allotted to fund. So the school budget comes from the local source, which is the city level. So that's 44% of the school budget, primarily coming from the property taxes of homeowners in the area. The second school fund coming from the state resources, which is 48%, and the money coming from the income taxes, sales tax, and fees. And the last school fund coming from the federal resources, which is only about 8%, and the federal money emphasis on grants for specific programs and services for students that need them. So for federal, so as I mentioned, federal is specifically or focused on a specific program. So these are the sample of the federal program. So Title I, which is the Title I money, it focuses on the program specifically geared to students from low-income families and areas, which provides money to local district to improve academic performance of those students. Another federal program money is the English language acquisitions, which offers money to schools with the students that do not speak English as a first language to help them learn English and improve proficiency on statewide examinations. Another example of federal money is the Reading First program, which provides federal money to help schools implement robust reading program that utilize scientific-based research to support their success. We also have the IDEA, which is Individuals with Disability Education Act, which allots money to schools to help students with disabilities get a quality education in the public school systems by providing them with the resource they need to succeed. Last one is Improving Teacher Quality Grants, which offers money for teachers training and development program within local schools and districts. So based on my experience, because aside from math, I also teach engineering. So every year my program is getting an extra money from the federal, which is the Perkins grant. Perkins is focused for the development of the career tech education in high school. So in the Philippines, it's considered like a vocational. So the money is not from the states or neither from the local, but it's coming from the federal level. And of course, there's a lot of responsibilities once you have the money in the program. They always check. So there's a program monitoring. They come to your classroom, visit the program. You have to make several reports at the end of the year. So to continue, in most cases, funding is divided by the students, as Mr. Jonathan mentioned earlier, with funding ranging from 3,000 per student in Utah to more than 11,000 per student in New York. So states may also allocate funding based on the specific programs, in some cases using federal money to programs that are implemented at the federal level. So that's the end of my report, and thank you for listening.